but we're trying to make this class like replicable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like one thing we should put in is a point that I think we can't make enough, which is the relationship between freedom and development.
Right.
Because that's something that we're taught to think of freedom as an abstract value,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, but no one in the world ever talked about freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion until like the 1400s in Europe.
Mhm.
Why? Well, because people were just evil until then. They were just mean. We're big mean people, and then John Locke was born. Well, no, it's because it's related to development, right?
Mhm.
That when society is at a primitive state, you can't have that kind of freedom. But it's with the emergence of the capitalist market, you started to have that kind of freedom. And that the United States will often condemn countries for not having the same level of freedom we have, and they're in different conditions.
Mhm.
And that the road to freedom is economic development, right? And that ultimately, you know, we want a world with so much economic development, there's total freedom, right? There's no need for a government even, right? And that is also the point that it was really, I mean, the communist governments kind of got away from this during the Cold War. A lot of them, especially, you know, China during the Cultural Revolution, Pol Pot, they got into this idea that you can make everyone equal in poverty because they were locked out of the global economy, and the idea was that, well, you know, maybe we're locked out, maybe we're poor, but we're going to make everyone equal. But you can't do that. The basis of the equality Marx talked about was abundance, right? You know, and the idea was that we're going to get the economy beyond the irrationality of the market, overcome this problem of overproduction. So the more we produce, everyone gets wealthier instead of people getting poorer because we produce so much. We're going to get beyond the irrationality of the market. We're going to have a planned economy. So we can create so much wealth that eventually we have a society where there's total freedom because there's enough for everybody, and there's no need for a government, and there's total equality because everyone's got enough. You know, that's kind of the idea, and that was kind of lost in the 20th century because these communist governments were surrounded and they fell into the trap of trying to be equal in poverty. And the Soviet system is very good at getting countries over that first hurdle. It builds the power plants, it paves the roads, it wipes out illiteracy, it builds a modern university system. But after you get over that first hurdle, then you have a problem because life has to be fun, right? And the market's very good at the stuff that makes life fun, right? And in the Soviet Union, when you had government bureaucrats deciding what clothing we're going to produce, that didn't work out too well, right? And the things that make life enjoyable, they're not the foundation of the economy, right? Those things you do kind of need people to vote with their dollars, and the 21st century socialism is largely you have the state runs the electricity, the natural resources, the state provides health care, the state paves the roads, but then they subsidize and they even use the government to subsidize and promote worker cooperatives or private businesses that do great things. In Nicaragua, they produce almost all their own food now. And their slogan is "Grow where you are planted," because they don't want an urbanization of the population, all the young people to move to the cities. And so they basically pay young people to start their own farms and their own businesses in the rural areas. And now Nicaragua, they have sanctions, they can't import food, but they don't have the problem that Venezuela had with food because they started growing all their own food, right? And they're subsidizing people to do it. So yeah, 21st century socialism is you have kind of a state that comes out of an anti-colonial revolution that then builds up a market economy around it, right? That's kind of the model. So those are the only things I wanted to add. But great job, Noah. Great. Yeah. We had a lot of economic information in there I didn't know that was very useful. So if you can do an outline of the class, so we can incorporate some of that, and we want everyone here to be able to give that class that Noah just gave.
Yeah.
Because our message is so unique. Because we're pro-growth, we're pro-innovation, and the understanding that degrowth is not compatible. Degrowth is a threat. The idea that we should have less, we should reduce productive forces. That is what is being passed off for socialism in our time. And I'll probably get into that more this afternoon, but
or in the West.
In the West, yeah. And that is very, very dangerous. And the idea that socialism means we all have less, or socialism means the government comes in and makes us all have less, or socialism means growth is bad. I mean, that is so toxic, right? Anyone who tells you growth is bad is trying to kill you. So, yeah.
Well, nobody ever thinks that they should stop growing, right? Even the people who advocate degrowth, it's like they also have like $80 million mansions,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Exactly.
Mike.
They
Yeah.
can't relate to where the vast majority of the population even is. I see it all the time in LA. The people at the top, I have friends who live on the west side of LA, and every time I bring up economics in some of our discussions, it's kind of like I get the deer in the headlights, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it's 'cause- and it's even true, I guess, in New York too. There are people that just won't leave Manhattan. They won't go out into the the barrios and see how other people live, you know, and it's the same thing in LA. You know, and I look at the Congressional Budget Office statistics going back to 2019 released before the pandemic. I think I'll turn this off 'cause